Hello Fiction Sheiks, welcome back to the channel. I'm Joanna. The company Revolution NJ is hosting their program called History Pinned, where the company selects 5 different art and historical locations, and then artists can create pin designs based on those locations, and if you win, you get $100. Your art gets turned into a pin. There is 1 pin per 5 locations, and then people can go to all those locations and collect all 5 pins. Yeah, so let's get on to talking about my art designs. This design is for the Cape May Lighthouse, and when I was doing a little bit of research for this location, everything kept mentioning the spiral staircase, so I thought, alright, let's do the spiral staircase. But let's get artsy with it by mixing the staircase design with the design of a chambered nautilus shell, because, you know, lighthouse is on the ocean, and nautiluses are in the ocean, and their shells kind of look like stairs a little bit. So yeah, abstract spiral staircase design. Here I am using the nautilus shell to outline the inner spiral. From there, I added in all of the lines for the steps, and as I got closer to the center of the spiral, the line weight got thinner and the lines got closer together to push the idea of steps getting farther away, you know, depth and perspective. This portion was very tedious to do and took the most amount of time. And now that that line is done, we can color. I chose this grayish beige kind of color. The steps of the lighthouse are white, but white is boring. So here we are with gray, and then I shaded the center with darker brownish colors. Then I put a shadow underneath each step, and I chose that shadow to be more gray side, while the center of the spiral is more of a brown shadow, just to differentiate the two shadows, if that made any sense. And around here is when I realized that this idea does not read very well. Like, it's obviously a spiral, but I don't think people are going to see this and think, oh, it's the lighthouse spiral steps. So I ended up scrapping this idea and doing something completely different, which is really sad because I liked the concept of an abstract spiral design. I think that is a more unique idea, but again, it's not reading as a staircase, and if people don't make the connection that this is supposed to be the spiral staircase of the lighthouse, then I am not going to win this design. So, moving on. My second idea was to draw the lighthouse at night, which is an extremely basic concept, which is why I did not want to do this design, but again, the spiral staircase wasn't working, so I had to do this. I chose a picture of the lighthouse off of Google, and I traced it just to get the shape correct. And from there, I added in the night sky. I chose this really nice dark blue as the base color. Then filled in the lighthouse and the land with black to make a silhouette. Then with a pale yellow, I added the light inside the lighthouse, and with that same pale yellow, I added the light beam coming out of the lighthouse. I used an airbrush to get that fuzzy transparency that is also the same brush that I used for the shadowing in the spiral staircase design. I did add bars going over the light inside of the lighthouse, which is a very small detail, but I like it. And then I used a couple different shape brushes to add in a bunch of stars in the background. I added those stars sporadically and in a couple different varying size to make it more realistic. And lastly, I added a highlight with that same pale yellow on the lighthouse and on the land, which again, small detail, but I think it looks so cool. This drawing took me about a half hour, and the spiral staircase took me about 3 hours, but I didn't finish it because again I scrapped it. Moving on. The next location is the Museum for the Early Trades and Crafts. So my concept for this one will be a quilt, because quilting is a very old art. I actually went to this museum and took some photos of the exhibition pieces, and I edited those photos, and I will use those photos in my quilting design. So we have a candle making mold, a beekeeping cover, a horseshoe, and that yellow thing is the design stamp for butter churning. I outlined the quilting grid in blue. I chose yellow and pink for the alternating quilt squares because those are cute colors, and then I shaded the perimeter of each square with a pale orange because I thought it looks cool, and then I added a different pattern into each square. I added a hexagon honeycomb pattern behind the beehive because that matches. For the candle mold, I added some drippy drips like melted wax. I made a horse pattern by taking a horse image off of Google Images and loosely tracing that, then repeating that outline and added it to the background behind the horseshoe. And then for the butter churner, I added a bunch of dots because dots are circular and that is a circular object. I did random patterns for the rest of the squares. For some of these, I used pre-made shape brushes or texture brushes, and for others, I freehand drew some random patterns. And now for the stitching, I did shade the stitching. I added a little orange dot underneath each stitch hole, and then for the stitching itself, I shaded with a darker blue. These pins will be a little under 2 inches, so they're not super small. However, this is a lot of detail to put on a little under 2 inches, so I don't know how well the shading of the stitches will pick up on the final print, but you can see it on my screen.
And although it's a subtle difference because it's so small, I think it is a big difference. I think the stitching looked way better with the shadows. So even though it is a very small canvas, I am saying that the small details such as shading, tiny little stitches was well worth it. Here's that finished design. I think this came out so cute, and our next location is the Morven Museum and Gardens. This museum I also visited in person. My original thought was to draw the gardens, however, they're not in bloom yet, so there's not really much to draw. However, in some of the rooms upstairs, there's some very simple line drawings on the walls, which I will put on the screen because I took photos of those to use as reference. My new idea was to draw the museum in this simple line drawing style. The photo that I am using right now I got off of Google Images. I did not take this photo, but I am tracing it to again get the shape of the building correctly, and now I am adding in the branch placements similarly to how they are in the photo, but not exactly because, you know, they're branches, they don't need to be perfect. I was very suggestive with the leaves because again, it's a plant and this is a simple line drawing style. It doesn't have to be exact. So for the tree on the left, I stippled in the generic shape of where the leaves, or rather flowers, are, and stippling is just dots on top of dots. Then for the tree on the right, I used wavy, kind of scallop-shaped-ish lines. I didn't want to do stippling again because these are two different types of trees, different leaves, so different mark. Then from there I started filling in the blank space up front by adding in different flower shapes and grass shapes and some dots. And I know the front lawn of the museum is just grass, but that's boring, and this is museum and gardens, so let's give it some garden by adding some cute little simple flower drawings. I did not plan this part, just haphazardly added some plant life wherever there was a blank space that I thought needed to be filled. I was originally going to leave this black and white, but I thought that was boring, so then I added color. For the background, or really the base color, is this dull yellow, and then I added in some pink and some greens for the grass and the flowers and the leaves. I think this one came out really cute. This is my final design. Originally, I wanted to submit one design for each location. However, I was kind of running out of the time, and the other two locations did not spark inspiration, so only 3 designs. I believe they are picking the winners at the end of April, so if I win, I will post about it on Instagram, so follow me there, link in the description. Alright, that is it. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And again, if you want to see more of me, click the link in the description. I will see you in the next video. Bye!